So we've been talking immigration. We've been talking Jean Boulet, the immigration minister's comments. You heard what Francois Legault had to say this week. So this is kind of timely. TOULA DRIMONIS is on the line because with the topic of immigration on everyone's minds, especially after what we heard from the immigration minister yesterday, this seems fitting. TOULA has a new book, and guess what? It's called We the Others. Allophones, Immigrants and Belonging in Canada. It was released last week. TOULA's on the line right now. Hi, TOULA.
Hi.
How are you? Good, you?
I'm well. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's our pleasure. Listen, my first question obviously will be, and we'll talk about the book in a second, you heard the same comments we've been talking about now for a little while. So here you are with a book talking about what the experience is like as an immigrant. Mm-hmm. What was your reaction when you heard Boulet's comments yesterday?
Oh, God. Where do I even begin? I mean, I was frustrated. I was angry. I was fielding tons of messages, if I'm being honest, from people, are typical Montrealers, typical Quebecers who come from an immigrant background who were extremely frustrated and were venting because they just felt so defeated and so deflated after those comments. I find them extremely hurtful. They're irresponsible. They're dangerous because they validate xenophobia and this anti-immigrant rhetoric. And at the end of the day, more importantly, they're false. This is inaccurate information, and it boggles my mind that an immigration minister, someone entrusted with integrating and welcoming immigrants, is saying these things.
So given that the Francois Legault has now said he will no longer be the immigration minister, but he also said there's a good possibility when reelected next week that he will give him another post. What do you think of that, TOULA?
I think we're a week away from, not even a week away from elections, and I think he's saying what needs to be said, and he's still on the campaign trail. And I think it's very typical of this government. I mean, they say something, they kind of cross that line, and then they backtrack. They try to minimize what they're saying. They're trying to, claim that it's taken out of context. And I feel that he has seen the backlash. He's someone that, governs often by polls, by public reaction. And I think he even understands that this was too far. People are upset by this. And I think he's just reacting. I don't necessarily believe that he understands the gravity of what was said. Maybe he will be removed from immigration, but I don't think that's even enough. I mean, many are questioning why Boulet should even remain, as an MNA.
Right. Especially, we had that, and I think it's a fair sort of comparison here. You had a candidate who was basically taken out of the race because she happened to lift. Okay, it didn't happen to. She actually
pulled some flyers.
To be fair, pulled some flyers out, and that disqualifies you from running as a candidate. But someone who said what he said, knowing, and I think that's so important to point out, it wasn't an opinion. The facts are there. We know the numbers, and he chose to basically lie about them. And he's going to run for office again. But I want to leave that where it is, so I understand how you feel about that. I think how most Quebecers perhaps feel about that. With respect to your book, so tell us a little bit about the book. Why did you decide to write this?
I decided to write this book about 7 or 8 years ago. My dad passed away. I was mourning. I was thinking about him, his life. Typical, first-generation immigrant, worked extremely hard to build a life here with my mother. He was in the restaurant business. And I saw it firsthand, the long hours, the fatigue. And at the same time, about, 4 or 5 years ago, I saw the anti-immigration rhetoric ramping up, more and more. And when this government was elected, you could hear it more. And some other political parties that have kind of come forward to talk about, debate whether we need immigration and how many we need and what do we need them for and how valuable they are to us and whether they should speak French or not. I mean, all these conversations that treat people as numbers, and it was highly offensive to me on a personal level because I'm the daughter of immigrants. So I'm listening to you talk about immigration, and I'm listening to you talk about my parents in this way, who I know worked extremely hard to, build a life, pay their taxes, be contributing citizens. And we're surrounded in the city by immigrants who contribute on a daily basis in so many ways. So I find this conversation so offensive. And again, also as a columnist, as an opinion columnist, as someone who works, in the industry and has been documenting politics and the social climate, I felt that it was kind of important and interesting for me. I was in this unique position where I could bring it all together, from a personal point of view, but also base everything that I had to say with facts, hard facts.
So you put this together, and we should explain, by the way, when you talk about being, the daughter of immigrants, right?
It was that typical story. Your parents had a restaurant, and they worked long hours. It's
and how many times have we heard the same? And it's funny too, because my parents were exactly the same way. They owned a small restaurant. They got up at 4 a.m. every day, worked 6 days a week. So I know the experience, and I know a lot of people we even heard from yesterday shared similar experiences. So to be able to chronicle that, I mean, to you was it more like, relief as much as anything else, beyond just, wanting to counter what you've heard from people saying, well, this is how immigrants are?
It was a combination of things. Yes, absolutely. I think the motivations were multiple. It was a little cathartic for me. I was in mourning. I was missing my dad. It was a personal kind of venture for me. But at the same time, I like I said, I did see this rhetoric ramping up. And I want to make it clear to our listeners that it's not just a uniquely Quebec issue, right? When we're talking about anti-immigration, this is happening across Canada. This is happening in Europe right now. And I could see this ramping up. And I felt that it was important to kind of remind people when they're listening to this or when they're reading, let's say, certain pundits who are very anti-immigration, that what they're saying, there's absolutely nothing new there. Their arguments are as old as time. Like generation after generation, wave of immigration after wave of immigration, we hear the exact same arguments. Immigrants don't integrate. They don't contribute. Their culture isn't the same as ours. They don't speak the language. They won't be able to become fully citizens of whatever place they go to. And it's nonsense, because wave after wave, each, a group of immigrants, each demographic proves that they can integrate and they do contribute and they do learn to speak the language, and their kids definitely learn to speak the language. So I find that it's frustration on my part, because I feel like at what point will we realize that a lot of these arguments just, are just not true.
And the heartbreak to me is this sense that no matter how hard you work, no matter how much you've contributed, that somehow you still don't fully belong here. Will that ever go away, TOULA?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mentioned in the book that I feel sometimes like I'm a Quebecer on probation, because I feel like I constantly have to prove my worth, prove my right to be able to criticize my own government. I write opinion columns for a living, right? So when I write a column that's critical of the government, which I have absolutely every right to do, just like every other Quebecer, I routinely get messages where people will imply that because I work in English or because my name is a very obvious Allophone Greek name, I don't have as much right as a Francophone to voice these opinions, which is absolutely ludicrous to me and highly offensive, because I'm 100% a Quebecer and I, identify as a Quebecer. But if you constantly, tell people that they don't have the same rights, or they should know their place and they shouldn't speak up about certain things, then why do you get offended when some people say, I don't feel like a Quebecer, I feel more like a Montrealer.
And yet you
say, I feel more like a Canadian, right? Because you're not allowing these people to feel like they belong here.
And yet what I find fascinating is that this book for you is not about Quebec bashing. It comes from a place of love, ultimately.
It does. It does. Absolutely. And I want to make that clear, because it's the accusation that is, for me, it's the laziest accusation, because I feel that when you don't really want to delve into the issues and debate something, from what am I trying to say here? Coming at it from a genuine, place of debating something, you'll just throw Quebec bashing, and it's a way of
easy
the conversation, right, and derail it. But it is coming from a place of love. I absolutely love Quebec, and I'm convinced that most Quebecers are very open and very welcoming. But we have a government right now that is setting the tone, and this tone is extremely divisive and extremely problematic.
I was going to ask you, because, when I read the posts on Twitter, and I know people come after you, as you said, there are those comments out there. By the way, to be fair, they're not just, I don't want to say they're just people who have a different opinion. There are misogynistic opinions out there as well. I mean, it's incredibly... It's incredibly sad to see, as you just said, if you have an opinion that doesn't necessarily fit the mold, what attacks you come under. Sometimes, Tula, I don't know how you do it because I've read some of the stuff that's posted. I'm like, wow, you got pretty thick skin.
You do.
I do. At this point in the game, after 15 years of writing opinion columns, I do have very thick skin. I still don't believe that someone who writes opinions should, have to deal with this day in and day out. I think some of the messages that I receive are absolutely, unacceptable. But I do have thick skin in the sense that I'm able to walk away and disassociate from it, and I'm fully aware that it's a very small vocal minority. In my day-to-day dealings, when I walk around in Montreal, when I'm speaking to people, I see the ease with which people interact and the respect that they have for each other, and how quickly a francophone will switch to English and an anglophone or an allophone will switch to French to accommodate people, and that's my reality. I know that people, get along for the most part, but these are such easy buttons to push when it comes to linguistic or cultural insecurity that it's very easy to push these buttons, and they're being exploited right now during this campaign, and I find it so irresponsible.
I agree. Well,
especially from a government that we already know this government is going to be reelected. Like, why are you even doing this?
True.
Fair question to ask. Tula, thank you so much again. The name of the book?
The name of the book is We the Others, Allophones, Immigrants and Belonging in Canada. It was released last week. Where can people find it, Tula?
Pretty much, I've heard that it's actually most copies are already gone right now, which is really amazing news for me. But it's supposed to be. I know they're printing new copies already. But most local bookstores, by all means, please support local. I know you can get it on Amazon or whatever, but I would prefer that people go to local bookstores.
Nice touch.
We the Others.
We the Others, Allophones, Immigrants and Belonging to Canada by TOULA DRIMONIS. Tula, thanks so much.
Thank you both so much.